The early 2010s, John Green has taken the literary world by storm, releasing probably the most influential teen romance tragedy novel to date, The Fault in Our Stars. That was in 2012, and the movie adaptation came quickly after in 2014, over 10 years ago. Even for the movie, that's crazy. But before we get any further into this video, quick introductions. Hi, hello, thank you for being here. My name is Alyssa. I mostly, make videos about fashion or things related to fashion. I say mostly because this video has nothing to do with any of those things. Sometimes I just have thoughts running around in my brain and I want to speak them into existence, into the universe, into the void that is the internet. And so that's what we're doing here today. Now, The Fault in Our Stars was certainly not the first of its kind of this genre. A quick research on Goodreads yielded results of books of this genre, main characters dying of cancer before 2012. One of those examples being a book called Before I Die by Jenny Downham that was also actually adapted into a movie called Now Is Good, starring Dakota Fanning. But The Fault in Our Stars certainly was the one that gained the most success, that gained the most attention and the most fame. I personally never read the book. I tried getting into John Green novels, read some of his other ones. They just really weren't for me. They were good, don't get me wrong. But I did watch The Fault in Our Stars movie after it had already been released from theaters, after it was already no longer in theaters, really only because I wanted to see what all the hype was about. And I knew going into the movie, that it was going to be sad, that someone was going to die.
Yeah, people are gonna die.
And so I didn't cry at the end. I knew what was coming. And I thought it was good. I didn't think it was anything groundbreaking, and it's not a movie I've ever bothered to revisit, but it was fine. I wasn't super impressed or anything like that. Okay, but for those of you who don't know, quick synopsis. The Fault in Our Stars is about a young teenage girl named Hazel who has cancer. She goes to some kind of support group and meets a fellow kid named Augustus Waters who's in remission. They bond and go on this road trip adventure to meet this reclusive author. They end up falling in love, and then, spoiler alert, surprise, surprise, Gus's cancer comes back and he's the one who ends up dying. It's kind of a surprise. I think the whole audience expects Hazel to be the one who dies, but then yes, Gus is the one who dies. Tragedy. Now, this book, most of John Green's books, but this one in particular, had teens in a chokehold. Okay, who remembers this era of John Green? Anyone? Anyone? I see some hands in the back. Raise them high. Let me see. Yes. Again, TFIOS, The Fault in Our Stars, I'm just going to refer to it by its famous acronym. TFIOS was the first teen romance tragedy, the first main character secretly dying of cancer book of this caliber. But I noticed recently this genre seems to trend every so often. It seems to pop back up for every new generation. What am I alluding to? Well, The Fault in Our Stars, TFIOS, the book came out in 2012. The movie came out in 2014, over 10 years ago. And 2 movies have come out on streaming services recently that kind of fall into this same genre, this same category of main character secretly dying of cancer. And I'm talking about My Oxford Year on Netflix and The Map That Leads to You on Amazon Prime. Admittedly, saying these movies fall into this genre is kind of spoilery, not gonna lie. But to be completely honest, it's not really that big of a surprise. It's pretty cliche and they're not really super subtle, especially with the marketing of these movies. I think, what was it? My Oxford Year, especially in the tags on Netflix, said tearjerker. So going into this movie, someone's gonna die.
Yeah, people are gonna die.
But to be very explicit, spoiler warnings for both movies, both My Oxford Year and The Map That Leads to You. So if you want to watch these movies, haven't watched these movies, don't want to know what's going on, but really, it's no surprise, then click away, come back later, that's fine. But again, I say, you're really not that much into a surprise with these movies. My Oxford Year came out first on Netflix on August 1st, 2025, with The Map That Leads to You coming out quickly after on Amazon Prime on August 20th, I believe, of 2025. My Oxford Year, the book, was published in 2018, and The Map That Leads to You, the book, was published in 2017. So they both follow very similar timelines in both publication and like movie adaptation release. But with the way streaming services have taken over film distributions, coupled with the declining reading rates, both My Oxford Year and The Map That Leads to You were not released with the same fanfare as TFIOS, released with the same amount of attention or reaching the same level of success as The Fault in Our Stars. But to do a quick recap of both movies, starting with My Oxford Year. My Oxford Year is about an American girl named Anna who defers her corporate job for a year to study literature at Oxford, which is like her dream, like her capital D dream. She loves books a lot. It's like one of her two main personality traits. And she also has a list, like a physical written down list of things she wants to do and accomplish in Oxford before her year is over. She ends up meeting and subsequently, of course, falling in love with her TA Jamie, which a lot of people were very upset about. There was a lot of beef and contention over that romance storyline. I really didn't see what the problem was. Like, he was a TA. He wasn't an actual teacher. He is a fellow student. So I really didn't see what the big deal was. Regardless, they end up, falling in love. Turns out he has cancer or some kind of fatal disease, and their previous decision to keep things easy breezy.
I'm breezy.
Doesn't work out, and after a lot of drama and fighting, they both end up wanting to commit to each other, like actually fully be in a romantic relationship. Jamie dies at the end of the movie, of course, and then Anna takes some time off to go traveling around Europe in a very touristy, cliched way, might I add. And then we end up finding out in like the last 30 seconds to 60 seconds of the movie that she ends up taking the teaching position that Jamie had. My thoughts. It wasn't difficult to watch this movie, but it also wasn't good. It was just entertaining enough. I especially liked the setting. I think that was the main draw for me, it being in Oxford and being able to see a lot of the town. I also loved the dark academia vibes. I love me some dark academia aesthetic. And I thought the friendship trio that Anna made throughout her year was a really, really nice touch. But the things I didn't like, I'm so sorry, baby girl, but I did not like Sophia Carson's acting. I said it. It was just kind of hard to watch, and it was really unbelievable. Her character, it kind of made it hard to really like Anna. I also thought it was really annoying that being American and liking books were her only two personality traits, like I mentioned, and there was a distinct lack of chemistry between the two leads, Anna and Jamie, played by Sophia Carson and Corey Milcreast. And I will say, I don't think Corey Milcreast was the issue here, okay? He's a great actor, a phenomenal actor. I think he did a phenomenal job in Queen Charlotte with India Amartifio. They had amazing chemistry. So that's why I say, if it wasn't Corey, there was really only one other reason why the chemistry wasn't working. I'm so sorry. But then I think because of the lack of chemistry, all of the cliches and all of the tropes just didn't land. They felt too much. They felt too over the top. I think the character of Anna was trying way too hard to be quirky. But moving on to do a quick recap of The Map That Leads to You. Maps is about another American girl named Heather who also goes abroad before starting her corporate job to travel around Europe with her two best friends. And Heather ends up meeting this New Zealander vagabond, Jack, through quirky, meet cute circumstances on the train to Spain, and they end up traipsing all across Europe following the journal of Jack's great-grandfather. Stick with me here. We end up finding out, I think somewhere along like the last part of the movie, that Jack's cancer has returned. It's something he's hid from Heather this whole time, and it's the reason why he ends up ditching her and ghosting her when it's time for her to return back to New York City to start her job. 8 months later, she returns to Europe for a friend's wedding. She is still hung up on this guy, and she uses the clues from the journal to find Jack. She finds him, they meet up, the end. My thoughts on this movie. Maps was also a little bit difficult to watch. I think a little bit more so than My Oxford Year, but in a different way. It was also just hard to stay engaged while watching this movie. I will say the European setting was a lot of fun, like seeing them travel throughout the different countries. I thought as I was watching this movie, how much fun it must be to be an actor and to be able to film on location. Like that is your job. Your job is to travel to work. Like that must be so cool. That must be so fun. However, I hated the insta love between Heather and Jack. Like the whole movie takes place, well, besides the 8-month like time jump, but their whole adventure takes place over 2 weeks. And then Heather is basically, she's like willing to upend her life for this guy. She wants him to move in with her in New York. Like what? Girl. 2 weeks is not enough time to decipher if he is some kind of serial killer, okay? Take care of yourself. I also thought their meet cute on the train was a little bit cringe. Like it just seemed the scene was trying way too hard for this to be cute and quirky and the thing we read about in books that we wish happens to us, but then seeing it in real life, we realize, oh, 1, that's unrealistic. Also 2, it's kind of cringe. Also, the way Jack ditched her and ghosted her was extremely cowardly. I hated that. And I hated the way she then mourned him for 8 months. Like, girl, you knew him for 2 weeks, okay? What is that cliche formula? Like, it takes double the amount of time you were with someone to get over them? Yeah. Like, I understand that's really not true. You know, people take different amounts of times to get over people. But girl, 8 months, that's what, 32 weeks? You were hung up on this guy when you knew him for 2 weeks? You need to figure out what's going on up here, okay? Also, lastly, I thought the journal aspect was confusing. Like they're following his great-grandfather's journal as his great-grandfather is documenting all of the places he's been and the things that he's done. But it seemed to me like Jack had already been to these places before. Like he had done this whole pilgrimage before and he was just doing it again. Like he seemed familiar with a lot of the places they went to. I don't know. Again, Maps really wasn't that great. It wasn't my favorite. I would say in both Maps and Oxford, they both utilized friendship really well. I loved the dynamic that Anna and Heather had with their respective friendship groups. But now to do a little bit of a compare and contrast, similarities and differences between My Oxford Year and Maps, starting with similarities. Number 1, it is the male love interest who is secretly dying of some kind of illness or cancer. He also doesn't want the female protagonist to know about it and thus pushes her away when they get too close. Typical. Number 2, both movies center an American girl abroad, a corporate baddie, or I guess a soon-to-be corporate baddie who falls for a foreigner, and also movies that heavily rely on American stereotypes of being dumb and uncultured. Number 3, the over-reliance on other cliches, one of them being bonding over literature. And number 4, lastly, each main character is in a tight friendship trio, which again, we love to see. In terms of differences, aside from the physical setting of Oxford and continental Europe, of a stagnant location versus a moving location, I guess. Number 1 is the amount of time spent developing the relationship. Again, Maps takes place over 2 weeks, whereas My Oxford Year takes place over an entire school year. So that is a much more reasonable amount of time. It is a much more believable timeline for this relationship to develop and for these feelings to feel real to the audience to buy into it. Like, Heather wants to move in with this guy after 2 weeks. And again, I say, that is not enough time to get to know someone, okay? The second difference is the way both movies deal with revealing the illness, not only to the female protagonist, but also to the audience, and the way it handles both of their deaths. For example, Anna finds out that Jamie is sick kind of by accident. She thinks he's being distant because he's cheating on her. Turns out he's actually just a sick boy. And she is able to make the decision herself to stay in Oxford, to stay in this relationship. Whereas Heather is just ghosted. She's abandoned, and she doesn't find out that Jack is sick until 8 months later, when he writes her a letter, like a physical letter, explaining that he's sick. That's the reason why he ditched her. Okay. Also in Oxford, we, the audience, see Jamie die, whereas in Maps, the ending is a lot more ambiguous. Like, we don't know how much time Jack has left. We don't know how he and Heather spend that time together. We also don't really know what happens to Heather after Jack presumably, inevitably dies. You know, I have in my notes, quote, "What does Heather do after Guy's death? Question mark, unquote." I think when I wrote that question, I forgot Jack's name. And then I didn't bother to change it. Now, I initially thought in my Oxford year, someone was actually going to die in a car crash. I saw, obviously, the tag for the movie that said tearjerker, so I knew someone was going to die.
Yeah, people are gonna die.
But we discover halfway through that Jamie, the male protagonist, is the one who has, I think it's some kind of rare blood condition. It's something his brother also had and died from. And Jamie saw the way the treatment of this condition took a huge toll on his brother's life and didn't want to go through the same motions. He wanted to take life into his own hands, live the rest of his life on his own terms, and not to deal with any of the hospital visits and all of that kind of stuff, which I respect. And so the illness part kind of surprised me. I suppose not totally, it's something I should have seen coming, but in Maps, I knew something was up pretty quickly into the movie with the way Jack was acting. It wasn't very subtle, even though I think the movie was trying to make it subtle, but the way Jack kept on avoiding getting his picture taken made me realize something was up. He was very avoidant. He didn't want to be memorialized or remembered in any way. I knew instantly that something was up. But it was after watching these two movies earlier this summer that I started to question, what is our fascination with these secretly dying of cancer tragedies, these star-crossed lovers, a romance that cannot and will not last forever trope, the grief and the cruel irony of finding love with someone who is dying. Taking a deeper look, I think these movies or these books are a great lesson on the power of love, the lesson of living life to the fullest. Like, Jack teaches Heather to seize the moment, to take a leap, to take on the adventures as they come. Jamie teaches Anna about life outside of Oxford and her very strict, rigid list. He also teaches her about gyros, the food, which I think is incredibly unrealistic given that Anna is a New Yorker and New York City has pretty much every single cuisine under the sun in the city. So she has most definitely heard of a gyro before, unless she's been living under a rock. He also teaches her to go to the most touristy places. Like, while he is dying, he tells Anna about all of these plans they should do, plans they should do to go traveling across Europe. Like, we should go to Athens. We should go to Venice. Like, okay. Yes, both of those places are beautiful and rich with history and culture, but they are also some of the most overcrowded, over-touristy places in Europe. Like, you can't come up with a more authentic experience than Athens, than Venice. Regardless, I think this genre, these tropes, remind me a lot of that quote, "It is better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all." But to get into the meat of this video, my issue with these two movies, not TFIOS. TFIOS is about a young teenage college student who also meets a fellow young cancer-ridden Gus, okay? Without her cancer, Hazel has her whole life ahead of her, okay? I am talking about the girl bossification of Oxford and Maps. Like I mentioned, both movies center young, career-oriented, goal-oriented women on the precipice of starting their corporate careers. They are type A girl bosses with plans, capital P plans, which really, if we're being honest, just consist of going to school and getting a job. And they both use traveling as like this last hurrah before starting on their corporate journeys. I have in my notes, but capital T, then, exclamation point. Both of these girls meet sick boys who irrevocably change the course of their lives. I also put in my notes, quote, both girls give up their corporate jobs to spend time with their dying boyfriends, unquote. Heather and Anna seemingly give up their original plans to work their corporate jobs after meeting these sick boys, TM. And I say seemingly because Anna does abandon her awaiting job at Goldman Sachs, but again, like I mentioned, we see at the very last scene of the movie that Anna takes the teaching job at Oxford that Jamie had. So she still has a job afterwards. Heather, we really don't know. Her future is more uncertain. The ending is more ambiguous. We just don't see what happens after she meets back up with Jack. After Heather gets home the first time and after starting her corporate job, she has this big, deep conversation with her dad about how the capital P plan doesn't feel right to her anymore, which is fine. I understand that plans can change after big life events or meeting certain people or going through different experiences. But then she quits her job to find him, which she does, and then what? Presumably, he dies, as the numerous phone calls from doctors that he ignores can confirm for us. Like, this girl quit her job for what? And then she finds him and he dies, and then what? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, she risked her whole career for this guy. She has 8 months working experience on her resume. How will she find another job after that? In this economy? She willingly gave up a stable, well-paying job in this economy to then do what? I don't know. What is she gonna do? Do what Jack did and just continue traveling around Europe for who knows how long doing fuck all? Probably not, given her type A personality that just doesn't change suddenly overnight. Like, at least Anna found another solid path. So that is my issue with these two movies. Why are these girls giving up their well-paying corporate jobs in favor of falling in love with boys and traveling around the world? Like, why are we losing women in the workplace? Are these movies anti-capitalism or anti-girl boss? Or are they pro-love and pro-living in the moment, which is really just anti-capitalism? Enter stage left, or I guess stage left, Gen X's version of falling in love with someone secretly dying of cancer, romance, tragedy, book to movie adaptation, A Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks. The book came out in 1999 and the movie was released quickly after in 2002 to not very good reviews. It received very mixed reviews, but it has since then gained a bit of a cult-like following. So do you see what I'm saying when I say this trope, this genre seems to come about every generation? But again, for those of you who don't know, to do a little quick recap of A Walk to Remember, it's about local high school bad boy Lanston Carter who gets in trouble, and as his punishment, he has to do a bunch of community service. He has to like clean the school, he has to tutor kids, and he has to participate in a school musical, which I don't see how that's community service unless it's supposed to teach him about like teamwork, I guess, and also with the tutoring. Like, I think he needs more tutoring than he is able to tutor to the kids. You know what I'm saying? But all of these activities leads him into the path of social pariah and saint, Jamie Sullivan. Jamie helps Landon with some of his community service, like helping him help the kids and helping him run his lines. And as they spend more time together, Jamie very boldly, might I add, warns, Landon, to not fall in love with her. Like, I love that for Jamie, that she has the confidence to tell someone completely in a different social sphere than her to not fall in love with her. Like, would I say that? No. But I love that for Jamie. And of course, despite her warning, Landon does end up falling in love with Jamie. We end up finding out that Jamie has leukemia. She's in her last stages of life, and after they graduate from high school, they get married, they're able to spend the summer together, and then she dies. But Landon's character, after the death of Jamie, does the complete opposite of what Heather and Anna do. Whereas Heather and Anna quit their jobs to do whatever, Jamie, so inspired he was by his wife's illness and her passing, literally becomes a doctor. He does not go gallivanting around Europe to find himself again. So why is it that he gets this major life transformation with a newfound appreciation for medicine, which is a famously lucrative career, might I add, when these two girls also experienced profound loss and got the opposite of an epiphany? I will interject and say Moulin Rouge, the musical from 2001, also kind of follows similarly to A Walk to Remember. It follows this wandering vagabond boy who falls in love with a beautiful, enigmatic, sick girl. She ends up dying and he's left to, I don't know, like figure out his life. But it's different. That was like the only other movie I could think of where the boy falls in love with the dying girl. Now, I think these two movies, Oxford and Maps, have chosen this particular route because of the economic state of the world right now.
Can we talk about like the political and economic state of the world right now?
A lot of workers are getting laid off, hiring has stagnated. We heard a lot of stories about overwork and corporate fatigue. And so Maps and Oxford, the movies, offer the solution to all of this corporate brainwashing, which is to just eschew it all and travel the world to find yourself, to fall in love with a dying person, to discover the true meaning of life. So rather than continue down the corporate baddie rabbit hole, these movies are not so much like a middle finger. It's nothing so blatant as that, but it's more maybe like a balm to the weary soul. Proof that life exists outside of corporate America. But you know what? I don't buy it. I have been arguing that these movies are anti-capitalism, which they are in a way, but I posit that they are much more anti-girl boss because, again, I ask, where are the men falling hopelessly in love with a dying girl, realizing the error of their previous type A ways and wanting to give up their corporate careers to go traveling around the world? Where? To interject, again, for another second, these types of movies, the falling in love with someone secretly dying of cancer, is different to the plot of I Already Know You're Dying of Cancer, movies like 5 Feet Apart, Meet Earl and the Dying Girl, even the aforementioned Now Is Good, based on Before I Die by Jenny Downham. In 5 Feet Apart, both the male and the female protagonists are sick, and they both know each other are sick. Neither of them dies that we see by the end of the movie. In Meet Earl and the Dying Girl, the female protagonist is sick, which the male protagonist already knows about. In Now Is Good, also the female protagonist is sick, but the male character finds out about it really early on in the movie. And yes, while all of these aforementioned movies are a bit more coming of age, all of the characters are still young, they're still in high school. Greg from Meet Earl and the Dying Girl and Adam from Now Is Good go on to university after their female protagonist counterparts die. They do not take a gap year to wander around the world to find themselves. They follow the plan TM. So even in I Know You're Dying movies, the guy still takes care of his education and presumably his career. Why don't Heather and Anna do the same? At least Anna follows her love of literature and teaches at Oxford. She still has a job, most likely making less than what she'd be making at her Goldman Sachs job, but a job is a job, okay? Heather, I have no idea. She just leaves corporate without a plan, which I suppose is the point. Like, she has to reform from her type A ways. But one, is that really necessary? Also two, that's the part that gives me anxiety. Anxiety, admittedly, yes, about a fictional character who is mourning the loss of another fictional character in a fictional story. But you see my point. Why are these girls' careers collateral damage in these boys' deaths? Why do their careers also die? I know, I'm reading way too much into this. I'm blowing this all out of proportion. This was just a fun exercise. It was more so just commentary on a trend that I noticed. Like this particular, very specific genre of movie, how I noticed it comes around every so often, and how, in my opinion, the story slightly changes and shifts to reflect the current state of the world when it's released. In reality, though, both of these movies, both Oxford and Maps, are pretty mediocre and a bit cringe-inducing in their own unique ways. They're, light and easy to watch, even though, it's pretty heavy material that we're covering. Someone dies. But I think that is just a reflection on how bad these movies are. Now, there is no real conclusion to this video. I kind of just ended the script abruptly. This was kind of more so, again, just an exercise for me to ask the hypothetical question: why does Hollywood like to see young women experience profound loss and then further upend their lives by taking away their corporate careers? That's a dramatic question, I know. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know all of your thoughts and feelings down in the comments below about any of the things I talked about, any of the movies I mentioned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!